blinked as I stared out at the river before me, the water flashing past my dangling hooves as I hung off the bow of the seahorse, my back hooves tied to the rail. I screamed, waving my hooves wildly as we flashed across the storm-gray waters. Okay, she's awake now, Glory yelled back, waving her hooves. Get me off this thing, I begged. Oh, man. How do you get yourself in these situations, Blackjack? Oh, shit. I didn't even know I was recording. Oops. Oh, whatever. I'm here, so... Hello, everybody. I'm Keenan47, aka Wolfkeen, and welcome to another edition of my My Little Pony Vlogs. And yes, before any of you forget, I know. Today, I'm talking about Read It and Weep, written by Cindy Morrow. What's going on with you this season, Cindy? Like, seriously, what's going on with you this season, Cindy Morrow? I mean, last season you wrote a lot of episodes I did not like, and you wrote my least favorite episode of season 1. Now you're writing some of my favorite episodes of season 2. You've written Sister of Social, which I love. You've written Family Appreciation Day, which I've loved. And now you've written Read It and Weep, which I like this episode. I think this episode is absolutely amazing in many cases. And it does have a moral that I can empathize with in more ways than one. So let's get into it, guys. The episode starts with basically Rarity and Pinkie Pie looking over Rainbow Dash doing a couple of tricks that we don't get to see for some reason. And it doesn't matter. But it pretty much ends with her crashing badly into the, I guess, the grass. And she ends up waking up in the hospital where she fractured, broke, whatever, one of her wings. And she has to be in the hospital for about a week. So, of course, she keeps talking about how she's going to go nuts being in a hospital because she has nothing to do. Like, oh, I can't be cooped up in here. I'm a world-class athlete. I can empathize with this. I mean, think about it. Like, say, you like running and you broke your leg. You're just going to be like, I can't run. I'm going to be bored. Same way how, me being a gamer, what would happen if I broke my arm? I wouldn't be able to play games. I wouldn't be able to play games for 6 to 8 weeks. I'd be like, like losing it at one point probably. So Twilight has this idea of Rainbow Dash reading a book which is called Daring Do and the Quest for the Sapphire. I forgot what it was called, but whatever. It's a Daring Do book. Basically what Daring Do is supposed to be is like a parody of Indiana Jones. And I do know a little bit about Indiana Jones. I did watch a couple of the older Indiana Jones movies. But the reason why I like this episode is not only because of the Indiana Jones-esque idea, but because of what we get in this story. Of course, Rainbow Dash refuses to read the book because she's like, oh, reading is for eggheads like you, Twilight, and basically disregarding the book. But of course, all of her friends try to tell her, oh, reading is a good thing and it's for everybody. So, of course, her friends leave, and Rainbow Dash just tries to find different ways to keep herself entertained. To the point that she is left, face-to-face with the book, and she's just like, screw it, I'll read it. And so she tries reading the book, and this leads to us actually entering the book. Like, we actually get to see what's going on within the book, and we get to see what's going on in the adventure plot. Now, this is going to be a little tricky talking about this episode in some cases, because I'm going to have to, cut between Rainbow Dash and Daring Do. So, let's hope I do my best. But let me get into this idea first. I like this idea of we're following Daring Do's story because, if y'all don't know this, Uncharted is my third favorite gaming franchise of all time. I love the Uncharted series. I think the Uncharted series is one of the best gaming series I've played in a long time. And I'm just a huge fan of adventure stories in general. Like, going on an adventure to a mythical temple to get this ancient treasure and stuff like that. I love these concepts. And that's why I've played games like Tomb Raider, Uncharted, and other stuff like that. So, you get the idea. So basically we see what Daring Do is capable of doing, going up against these different cats, I guess. And at one point, Rainbow Dash says that she loves reading, and then calls herself an egghead. I can actually empathize with this, because at one point I used to say reading is not cool. Like, I used to say reading is not for everyone. I'm like, whoever likes reading is a freaking nerd, or a freaking idiot. And I ate my words later, because I did find books that did pique my interest in many ways. I mean, I can't show you, but there are books up there on my shelf. Maybe I'll take a picture of that. You know what? Maybe I'll put a link in the description to a picture showing the amount of books I have. But I actually have a good chunk of the Halo novels. Those were some books that I got into, and I have a good amount of books that I got from school. So within time, I've become a big person when it comes to reading, and I absolutely love reading. But yeah, it started out the same day as Rainbow Dash, where like I didn't want to read, and then when I did want to read, I didn't want to tell everybody because they would make fun of me possibly. So what happens throughout this adventure is that we keep flipping between Rainbow Dash and Daring Do's adventure. None of which is like, none of which, a lot happens story wise. But in Rainbow Dash's area, we see her trying to hide the fact that she likes the book and trying to read it as much as possible. While in Daring Do's story, we see her going after this ancient treasure, going through the temple, like, going through these crazy traps, like spike traps, arrow traps, and other stuff like that. Like, it's basically the it's based on Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think that's what this Daring Do story is based off of, Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. So as we keep flipping between like the stories, in Daring Do's story we meet this villain called Aoi Zodel. I have no clue what he is. Go ahead and leave a comment if you know what he is. And at one point, Rainbow Dash is getting to the point where she's almost done reading the book, but then she gets admitted out of the hospital because, her wing is healed. So now she's trying to figure out a way to get the book back so she can read it some more. Of course, she comes to the conclusion that Twilight has one because at the beginning of the episode, Twilight says she has the entire, has every book. So, but then she's like, no, because then Twilight is going to give me guff for calling her an egghead. So she tries to get herself back into the hospital by faking her injury, which failed epically. And then she breaks into a hospital to get the book. And what makes it worse is the fact that Rainbow Dash doesn't even wait until she's out of the hospital to read the book. She finds it under the bed and immediately starts reading it again and gets caught by the hospital staff. And pretty much, like, the beginning scene of the Daring Do segment, Rainbow Dash goes through it in her own way with the hospital staff. So pretty much the hospital staff chase Rainbow Dash all around Ponyville to the point that they chase her to the front of the library, where she finally admits to her friends and everyone that she's an egghead and that she has been reading Daring Do. So basically Rainbow Dash says that the book is, amazing. It's unputdownable. But then she had to put it down at one point because, she had to leave. Of course, all of her friends tell her that she didn't need to go on creating like a ruckus, or as Pinkie Pie kept saying, fracas, if that's even a word. But Twilight gives Rainbow Dash the book that she needs so she can finish reading it. And of course, we get our moral of the story in this episode, which is don't knock something before you try it. That's a good moral. Really good moral. Like, really, really good moral. Like, a moral that you need to implement in your everyday freaking lives. Because let's face it, you don't learn something new. You don't figure out you're good at something, and you don't, find something new to do unless you give it a chance. Like, say you saw a new meal say you saw a couple of meals on the, on the pamphlet, and you didn't know what they were. Do you just knock them off saying like, I don't know what they are, I'm not going to try them? Or do you give it a try? You have to give new things a try at times, because you may like it. You may like it. You may just like it. I gave reading a chance, and I freaking love it. And another example of this, and yes, I'm going to have to pull up the bucket again, because another example of this is Fallout Equestria. For the longest, I knew about Fallout Equestria, but I never sought it out, because at the time, I was tilting my head like, how does Fallout work with My Little Pony? So I never fully read it, and when I kept hearing people talk about it, I'm like, it's Fallout and My Little Pony. How does that work? It does not work the same way as Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. So, ANY released his Fallout Equestria review video. I watched it. It convinced me to check out the book. And you want to know the funny part? Even though that video convinced me to check out the book, I took 2 more weeks before I finally decided, screw it, let's go check out the book. And I'm glad I did. See, like, I'm glad I tried something new. Like, I'm normally a person who avoids fan fiction because I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a big fan of fan fiction because sometimes they're written well and then other times they're just written poorly. This is why I usually avoid certain fan-made works in every fandom because I'm afraid that it's going to be bad and I'm going to get disappointed, or I'm just not going to want to be dedicated to it. This is why I didn't want to get into Fallout Equestria because I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this. So I pretty much followed Rainbow Dash's philosophy of saying, I don't know why people like it and I don't think it's good, even though I never read it for myself. So when I finally checked it out, I'm a fan now. I have a bucket! I have a bucket! I have a freaking bucket for Fallout Equestria jokes and references. Like, do I need to explain how much more of a fan of Fallout Equestria I am? I talk about it with my friends every single day. So I'm pretty much as dedicated of a fan to Fallout Equestria as Rainbow Dash is to Daring Do. So yeah, this episode is extremely relatable in more ways than one. And so we see the end of the Daring Do plot where she is able to escape her trap and she steals the statue from Aoizotl and she continues on to her next adventure. Then we see Rainbow Dash grab the next book, Daring Do and the Griffin's Goblet. And that pretty much is where the episode ends. So read it and weep. Love this episode because it is extremely, extremely relatable. At least to me, because I started out that way, where I didn't want to get into reading and stuff like that. But once I did, I got into it. And of course, I started out that way with Fallout Equestria, where I was like, how do you like Fallout Equestria? There's no way people should like Fallout Equestria. And after I read Fallout Equestria, I was like, okay, you got me. Color me surprised. This is damn good. And that's just being honest. Like, this episode is highly relatable in many ways, and it reminds me of how I got into reading, how I got into various other things in my life, and it reminds me of how I got into Fallout Equestria, because this is a moral people need to learn about not knocking something before you try it. This is a really good moral that people need to learn. And that's just being honest. Like, I really don't have anything else to say. I mean, I'm pretty much just gushing over the episode. So, read it in a week. Love this episode. Definitely in my top 5 favorites. Alright, guys. Well, I guess that's all I need to say for now, guys. So, until next time, I'm Keenan47, aka Wolfkeen. Hope you enjoyed this edition of my My Little Pony Vlogs for Season 2. And until next time, guys, take care. And it's time for me to get back into some Project Horizons.